won't be back, and she won't leave you time to think or pack. You'll be naked now, but you won't lack, and love will be your home. And she's standing with an outstretched hand, motioning, and you may not understand, but you take her lead, for you have no need but this love. And she's standing with an outstretched hand, motioning, and you may not understand, but you take her lead, for you have no need but this love.
Thank you, Dina. That's lovely. Our word for today is freedom. In thought, word, and action, I celebrate my freedom. There are many ways to feel free. I may work hard to become financially free. I may plan trips so I can freely explore the world. I may commit to learning for intellectual freedom, or exercise my body for greater freedom of movement. Even as I do my work in the world to know freedom, I remember that I am always free at the level of spirit. No situation or circumstance has power over me. Every day in every area of my life, I live from my divine nature, where I am wholly and completely free. Through my inner powers of understanding and faith, I recognize and embrace empowering beliefs. My spiritual gifts of strength and release keep me on course and help me free myself from habits that derail my spiritual growth. And from Galatians, through God within, I am grateful to be free. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Okay, Dina? Dina's muted.
You're muted, Dina.
Thank you. So the lyrics for the congregational song are in the chat box. It is, "Oh, I woke up this morning." Now, this is a pretty easy song, so I'm not going to break it down and teach it. I think I'm just going to jump right in. It's got 3 verses, which will be plenty enough for you all to catch on to it. Let me make sure I start in the right key. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sing the first verse once for nothing. Then you can join in with me. We'll do the whole thing. Here we go. Verse 1. Oh, woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. There it was for nothing. Now we'll do it for real. Go through the whole song. Here it is. Verse 1. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dina. Love it, love it. I've heard that song, stayed on the spirit, but spirit is the freedom, right? And vice
Exactly.
versa. Thank you for that. We're going to take a moment now and light our Christ candle. I'm going to bring that over and place it in front of, essentially in front of the camera. You know, as I light this candle today, I think about, of course, the Christ, the indwelling Christ. We invariably focus on that indwelling Christ as we light this. I'd like to think about also lighting this candle as the Christ of our nation. You know, we don't typically think in terms of a Christ as our nation or in our nation, but we know that spirit exists in everyone and everything. And so it's a birthday candle of sorts, as July 4th is here, and we light this candle in honor of the Christ indwelling each of us and in honor of that Christed nature of our nation when we are truly in alignment with spirit, which is what we'll be talking about today. So this will go over my shoulder and in front of that picture of Jesus, our way shower and our teacher. And I'll go ahead, if I may, Reverend, and lead us in our affirmation. I just kind of dove into that. Our affirmation is, I am courageously creating space for my greater good to manifest. Let's take that together. I am courageously creating space for my greater good to manifest. And I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. I don't think that's on my end, but maybe that'll disappear in a few minutes. Is that a distraction for anyone? If it is, just raise your hand. Good. Okay. So back to Dina.
Thank you, Steve. To open up Reverend Steve's talk this evening, this is a Jerry Florence song, Fly. I want to fly like the birds in the sky, like the ones who don't know they're not supposed to fly. I want to fly. Do you want to fly? Like the bumblebee whose body is too big for its wings. He looks to the sky, starts to sing, and then he flies. I want to fly. Do you want to fly? We once believed that the world was flat. One man was brave, he took a chance to fly. I want to fly. Do you want to fly? Now I'm letting go of the things that tie me down. I soar to the future, high above the ground. Up here I see why it's taken me so long to let go. And now I'm finally free to fly. And now I fly. Do you want to fly? I want to fly. Fly. Do you want to fly? Do you want to fly? I want to fly. Fly.
Beautiful, Dina. Thank you. Bless you. You make me want to fly.
Oh, good.
I think all of us. And it is an intimate crowd that's gathered here for our July 4th Sunday celebration, but a beautiful crowd. And we're grateful to the Thomases for hosting the group there today. And I think we got Reverend Jim and Nancy Rosemergy, along with Mary Ann and Bob and Louise. And I assume spring is close by, but not present, which I understand. And dropping down, we've got on my screen anyway, two beautiful, beautiful ladies, Reverend Jessie, and I should know your name, dear. I apologize. Jessie's going to take us off mute.
It's Levon.
There you go, Levon. Thank you, dear. Bless you. And of course, we've got Gail and Reverend Claudia and our wonderful singer, Dina. And Dina, we're so grateful for the music. So by way of the lesson today, I don't know about you, Reverends Jesse and Jim and Claudia, but I can only think of a very few times when July 4th has fallen on a Sunday. I know it's happened a few times in my 36 years of doing this work, but kind of neat that it's actually on a Sunday this year. Of course, it was 245 years ago today that our forefathers set forth the Declaration of Independence. And it's natural, as the Daily Word has alluded to, that we talk about freedom on this particular Sunday. And while I offered the idea of three levels of freedom and talked about physical freedom, mental freedom, and spiritual freedom, I'm going to mainly be focusing on spiritual freedom and how it informs our physical, mental, emotional freedom, and also our freedom as a country and as citizens of this great United States. I'd like to start with reading by reading from Charles Fillmore, his definition of freedom: the quality or state of being without thought or restraint, bondage, limitation, or repression, having a complete sense of well-being. It is a result of regulating one's life according to principle, not according to what anyone else may think or say. We can never know the full meaning, Charles continues, of freedom until we abide in the Christ consciousness. Without prayer and spiritual meditation, there can be no concept of spiritual freedom, and therefore no demonstration of it. And then Charles exhorts us, as he often likes to do that very thing. It is gained only through spiritual development, gained in long hours of communion with God in the silence. Liberation from bondage comes as we seek first the perfect mind of Christ. And the quote from John, "If therefore the Son shall make you free, you shall be free indeed." And we thank you, Charles Fillmore, for that beautiful, slightly lengthy definition of freedom. Jesus, of course, also in John said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." We've quoted that many times as ministers and also as lay people in this beautiful work we call unity. And of course, our definition of the truth may vary a good deal from what more traditional thinking may be, but we know it's the truth that indeed sets us free, the truth that Jesus taught and lived. One of my principal teachers in my life as a spiritual seeker has been Alan Cohen. How many know Alan Cohen's work or the name? He wrote The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore and many, many books after that. I had the good fortune to develop a friendship with Alan over the years. He was a guest of our home on several occasions when he came to Atlanta. And I had a chance to experience a very intensive but very helpful workshop in Hawaii with him many years ago. And so we've maintained a connection over the years, and I have deep, deep appreciation for the way that he has lived his life. And so I, as most of you know who know me, know that I consult his daily dose of sanity on a fairly regular basis, and he has some very beautiful things to say on this July 4th. The title is Really Free. And he quotes Swami Satchidananda in the opening when he said, "We started out fine, then we got defined, now we need to get refined." And he goes on to talk about the way we started out as a nation 245 years ago. He writes, "Very few people know that the founding fathers of the United States and the framers of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were very spiritual men, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and advanced metaphysicians. The country was conceived and inaugurated not simply as a political movement, but as a radical step in living under higher spiritual laws." If you examine the back of a dollar bill, you will find many mystical symbols, and I just happen to have one handy here. I encourage you not to go digging for one right now, but most of us have been referred to those symbols before, but just to take a moment, many mystical symbols, including the all-seeing eye of God, a pyramid, and the Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum, meaning a new order of the ages. The front of the bill also contains several Rosicrucian symbols. The founding fathers were champions of political freedom, but they grasped a deep understanding of the spiritual freedom, our power to rise above circumstances and bring the light or higher wisdom to our daily lives. If you're free politically, but your soul is in bondage, you cannot say that you're free. If you're liberated in your mind and heart, you are truly free. Now, Satchidananda talked about starting out fine, then getting defined, meaning we veered away from those basic teachings in our holding on to slavery, in our unwillingness to give the women the right to vote, and a number of foibles and miscues that we made over the years. Of course, a lot of those things are being pointed out to us today, and I understand that. But now Swami Satchidananda says we need to get refined. The reason I wanted to read this piece from Alan, and there's another piece that I'll come back to, is because it gives us an idea of what happens when we veer from principle. Whether we agree or not that our country was founded on spiritual principles, we can agree that when we veer from spiritual principles, life gets dicey. One of those quotes, pieces on the back of the dollar bill is the Latin term annuit ceptis or septis. Typically in Latin, it would be ceptis. And that literal meaning is favors undertakings. When it's shown as it is there with the Great Seal of the United States, it's shown with the all-seeing eye of God or providence. And so the contextual understanding is that providence favors our undertakings. I think we can agree that when we are in alignment with principle, providence favors our undertakings. Deepak Chopra wrote, "The source of all creation is pure consciousness, pure potentiality, seeking expression from the unmanifest to the manifest. And when we realize that our true self, our Christ self, as we would say in unity, is one of pure potentiality, we align with the Spirit, with the power that manifests everything in the universe." Charles Fillmore, of course, once again, as I mentioned, exhorted us to go to that source that is God in order to reinforce and reveal more deeply and more clearly that Christ nature. And as we do, then providence favors our undertakings. We're aligned with that universal unmanifest, and we bring into manifestation that which is consistent with it. And so back to our friend Alan Cohen for a moment. Today, he said, would be a good day to consider how free you are. If you're living in pain, fear, resentment, or conflict, it is time to declare independence. When I read those words early this morning, because that's when I consulted this piece, it reminded me of some of the resentments and conflict that I've been feeling in my own life as I look out across the spectrum of our nation and our world. And it encouraged me to declare once again my independence, my dependence on spirit, but my independence from fearful or conflicted or resentful thinking. He says, if you fight with people you care about and hadn't been having a problem there, or feel enslaved in some way, if you feel shackled by economic stress, you're being moved like the pilgrims who left England to flee political oppression, to escape the emotional oppression of feeling limited by external circumstances. We've all felt oppressed, as he says, in one way or another, and we're all freedom-seeking beings. If we truly want to honor the United States and its founding fathers, today let us remember the kind of freedom they valued as men and women of higher thinking, freedom of the heart, mind, and spirit. And so, with that as a backdrop, as something of a context for the talk today, I want us to focus on the heart, the mind, and the spirit. Not so much on physical freedom, because we all know what that feels like. Emotional freedom, we sometimes have a challenge with when we are in that place of unforgiveness or judgment. And we will cover that essentially in our time together today. And I mentioned mental freedom, and of course, that's the place where we have probably the most work to do, because when we are free in the mind, when our mind is stayed on the spirit and stayed on freedom, then we are truly free. So around the heart, let's begin there. It occurred to me in some recent travels that Mary and I made that this is the time, if ever there was a time, and you have heard me speak to elements of this, to be radically friendly, particularly friendly toward people that may feel down or may feel oppressed in some way. Each of us has a concept and an idea about what those individuals may look like in the life that we live daily. But I want to suggest that we embrace the idea of radical kindness and radical outreach to those that we encounter on a daily basis, breaking it down at the cellular level, if you will, for our nation, at the level of our daily living, might look like this. Mary and I recently had occasion to travel again, and we found ourselves in the presence of a server who was not having a good day. Now, my ego mind wanted to think, wait a minute, who's spending the money here? Who is the customer here? We were celebrating our 34th anniversary on this particular day, and I thought, you know, this really needs to be a special occasion, and we need a server who's mindful of us. But I remembered the talk that I was giving today, and I thought, well, let's see, here's my opportunity to practice some of that radical kindness as much as I would like it to be flowing the other way. So I turned on the jets. I engaged this person in conversation. Mary joined in with her beautiful smile and her word of encouragement. And before long, we had created a really beautiful friendship with this individual. I'm reminded of the ad that encourages folks in their 30s and 40s not to be like us older folks and think that the server needs to know our name. But we ended up giving this server our name and a little bit of history about our 34 years together. It was a beautiful exchange and a wonderful time. And so we continued that process throughout the trip, and it was really creating a trip to remember, as I'm sharing a little bit of it with you now. I have a practice most days of walking. I try to walk for about 30 minutes in the neighborhood, which involves not only some nice downhill walking, but also some uphill walking, which comes toward the end of my walk. And I make it a practice to wave, in not just with a little quick wave, but with a very significant wave to every individual who comes my way and every individual who approaches me from the back. I put my hand up about the time I think that they might see me. And most of the time, their hand goes up, even though they're driving by. And most of the time, the folks that I encounter put their hand up as well. Now, it may not change the world. It may not change the nation or the state of Georgia, but I think that it may make a difference in the neighborhood. Obviously, it's easy to be friendly with the neighbors to our left and right. We see them and occasionally call on them for help, or they do the same. But to really encourage this idea, now for each of us, it's going to look a little different, but it does mean sometimes stepping out of our comfort zones and really making an effort to make a difference at this level. Heart. And of course, the more we do that, the more we're inclined to do it, the more it opens our own hearts. And the more we're allowing ourselves to be really in alignment with that principle that our forefathers had in mind when they founded this country 245 years ago. As far as the mind goes, of course, Charles Fillmore exhorted us to find that time with Spirit. Charles was, as most of us who've been around this work know, a very patient man, a very structured man. And he, as I understand it, would spend long hours in meditation, as he's called on us to do. But he would also spend a significant amount of time at the end of the day in forgiving, in working within the beautiful corridors of his mind to forgive those who he felt like he needed to forgive, probably in forgiving himself for mistakes that he had made through the day or those that had come to mind from mistakes of the past. As we do this individually, we're encouraged to do it for those mistakes that we've made as a country. Rather than dwelling on those mistakes of the past, to forgive ourselves for those mistakes. And I think that's something that, although they didn't build it in per se into the Declaration, that our forefathers would encourage us to do. We found forgiveness in the later 1800s with the Great Britain and others who had oppressed us. We found forgiveness in our beautiful guidance through Abraham Lincoln after the Civil War was ending, or as it was ending, and as he set the stage for the freedoms that we were to instill in others and convey to others. He set the stage, in fact, for the civil rights movement of the 60s by his example. And so in the mental house cleaning that we do, and the mental house keeping that we do in that structured forgiveness work and so forth, in our willingness to remember our oneness with each other, we allow Spirit and the principles of Spirit to guide our minds, to bless our minds, to make sacred the sanctuary of our minds, that we might be agents of freedom, spiritual freedom, and freedom in all of its faces in our world. One of the things that my son Stephen reminded me of on his birthday when he turned 49, about a month ago, a month and a day. He said, you know, Dad, there was a reading that I made in A Course in Miracles, a statement that I made that really spoke to me. And I said, and what would that be? And he said, I am not a body, I am free, for I am as God created me. This is an address to our physicality. And it doesn't mean that we don't honor these physical bodies as the temples of spirit that we often refer to them to as, but it does remind us that this is one expression of our spirit, that these spirits, as we've talked about before, continue to express, make a difference, grow in nurture and help others, even when we're free of these physical bodies. There's a statement in A Course also that says, we are spirit, free of all limits, free to forgive and free to save the world. We save the world each time we disidentify with the ego. Each time we say to ourselves with some sincerity, fear is the stranger here. I am at home in God. Whatever affirmations we may choose to work with, each one can be liberating and can take us to a deeper place of freedom. Our friend Alan Cohen says, how free do you feel? He asked the question, what declaration of spiritual independence would you like to make? And then he gives us two beautiful affirmations. I claim my freedom to be happy. Let's take that one together. I claim my freedom to be happy. And the last one is, I release my imprisoned power. I release my imprisoned power. This idea of true freedom, I think, derives from alignment with principle. And when we find ourselves not feeling that spiritual freedom, that spiritual happiness to which we're definitely entitled, it is a call to go back to the basics of our teachings, to those 5 principles, if we're in unity and choose to let that be our standing ground, that there is one presence, that we are made of that one presence, that we are indeed individuals who create our life experience through our consciousness, that we use the power of meditation and prayer as we were exhorted to do in Charles Fillmore's definition, to really make principle number 5 come to life in our lives. Not just talk these ideas, but be willing to live them. I found myself writing today, true freedom derives from alignment with principle, and conversely, bondage is experienced when we're more aligned with 1,000 different narratives, what Fillmore referred to as what anyone else may say or think. 1,000 different narratives with a potpourri of ever-changing beliefs, with the darkness of the sense consciousness as described by Fillmore. All of us who have read and studied the wonderful work of Dr. Emily Cady in Lessons in Truth remember that she essentially begins that teaching by talking about Moses and his leading the Israelites out of Egypt. And of course, the Israelites, as Charles Fillmore says in the Metaphysical Dictionary, reminds us that Israel is a spiritual state of consciousness. He actually defined it in this particular way. He said it is the illumined thoughts in consciousness. Moses, of course, represents that which draws out that spiritual consciousness as he drew his people out of the bondage of the Egyptians. And of course, Egypt, as Fillmore describes it metaphysically, is life in the depths of the body consciousness. As we look across the landscape of our United States today, we see a tremendous amount of division, a tremendous amount of disunity, or as Satchidananda defined it, the defining. And so to come back to the refining, we must be willing to come back to principle, the principles that allowed us to come forth as a nation, and the principles that allow us to come forth as free individuals. Principles of loving kindness, principles of compassion and understanding. And through the practices of forgiveness and gratitude, we find ourselves in that place of spiritual independence, of living under the higher spiritual laws. In God we trust is a motto that we find on all of our coins, all of our currency, and in other places, license tags for some of us. But of course, it's far more than just a motto. It is a guide to reclaim our unity within ourselves, our unity within our families, and within our friends, on whatever side of the political aisle we may find ourselves or we may see them. It is one that is indeed a calling card for our common bond in freedom, a freedom that reflects our Christ nature, that freedom that our beautiful friend Alan Cohen spoke to, of the heart and the mind and the spirit. And so with that, we will ease into our meditation. I'll ask you, if you will, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and allow yourself to be in touch with your beautiful breath. And as you take that breath, and as we begin to hear the chords of the music when Dina's ready, we allow ourselves to feel, in whatever way is perfect for each of us, gratitude. Gratitude for this day. Gratitude for all those who have made this day possible. The ability to live in a country where we are free. Free to speak, free to practice our religion. Gratitude for all of those across this land, with whatever may be happening in their lives, some in not so fortunate circumstances, some feeling very, very good. Gratitude for our first responders in Sunrise, Florida, who've been working tirelessly for these many days to free those who are still living in their bodies, and to free those bodies whose spirits have stepped away. Gratitude for all those who serve in whatever capacity to allow us to experience the freedom that we feel. Gratitude that folds back over the 245 years of this nation. For those who set things in motion for good to unfold. Forgiveness for ourselves when we have missed the mark. Gratitude for all of those who over the years have helped us to become a more perfect union. Gratitude for minds that have opened to new ideas. Gratitude for those who are still seeking to find those more open minds. And most of all, gratitude for principle. The principle that opens our hearts to our true nature. Gratitude for that refreshing rush of spirit in our minds that brings a clarity and a peace and an authentic power. Gratitude for you, God, our Mother, Father, who fashioned us to live in freedom. Freedom of spirit that transcends the physical, that transcends the dream, that transcends the state of being asleep. Gratitude for that freedom that was ours before we fell asleep. Gratitude for that brooding freedom that looks over us through your Holy Spirit as we sleep. Gratitude for all those awakened beings, for Jesus, our way shower, and all the others who come in that energy of love and awakening. Gratitude for the knowing that this awakened state is our true freedom, our gift from you to us that waits for us. And so we, in a moment of silence, relax into that place of awakening, of being refined, as the Swami spoke to us in the silence, in the sacredness of the Christ. And as we find our breath once again, and as we listen to the music of our beautiful beloved Dina, we allow ourselves to rejoice in the freedom that we are.
Thank you, Steve. That was wonderful. Now is the time in our service when we acknowledge our gratitude for the abundance of the good that God has for each of us. That abundance flows when we are open and receptive. It is always available, but it is our choice to receive and then to give from that abundance, that others be blessed as we have been. I invite you to take that gift within you, the gift that blesses this ministry, and join me in our offering blessing. Together, divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And it is good. Amen. And I believe Dina has another song for us.
Yep, this is a Ricky Byers song, I Release. Please feel free to join in with me. The lyrics are in the chat box. I release and I let go. I let spirit run my life. Heart is... Sorry, were you talking to me? No. Okay, sorry about that. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I am free in the spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I am free in the spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I am free in the spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I am free in the spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God.
Yes, thank you. And now for those of you downstairs, I guess you're ready to gather for the peace song. There they go. All right, Dina.
Okay, let me put this in the right key. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be.
right.
Wow, Dina.
Good way to go. Okay, now it's time for our prayer for protection. I'm going to get it right this Sunday. I got to get it right. Together, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are,
God is, and all is well.
and
Yay,
it
God.
is. You can stop recording. All right, everyone can unmute now.
I'd like to offer a prayer for Reverend Jesse.